So I'm fascinated by people who excel at their craft, who are, at the top of their field, high achievers. I'm always curious, there's so many talented individuals in this world. Why is there a certain group that are the high achievers and that tend to all consistently be at the top of their field? Now I'm curious about what motivates them, what drives them, and most importantly, what are they doing that I'm not? So today on my speech, I want to talk about why the best are the best. Whether it's in business, sports, entertainment, politics, what drives them, and from what I've observed, I want to share the 3 most common characteristics I've noticed. Now, before I go any further, I do want to preface that by saying, in addition to the common characteristics I will share today, I realize there are several other characteristics that goes into individuals' achievement. I also want to say, you notice I'm using the term high achievers at the top of their field. I'm not using the term successful because I know a lot of people have different definitions of success. That's a conversation for a different time. And lastly, I want to say before I begin, I am far and away not at the top of my field. My title at work is associate. So for those of you that don't know what that means, I'll translate for you. It means I do not make very much money, and I do not have very much power in my job. However, I'm very observant, so I want to share the 3 characteristics that I've observed. The first one is I found people at the top of their field to be insanely, almost homicidally competitive. I know homicidal is an extreme word, but these people literally hate to lose more than they enjoy to win. I think when most people think about being competitive, they immediately think of sports. And as a sports fan, I do have some sports references coming for you guys, so hang tight. But also, if you think about it, business, politics, entertainment, it's all a huge competition. Mark Cuban, the owner of the Dallas Mavericks, he's obviously a very successful businessman, made his money in the tech industry, started his own tech companies. I would classify Mark Cuban as the top of his field in the tech industry. And he has this quote I want to share that really, I think, encompasses this competitive mindset that I'm referencing. He says, "There's no sport as competitive as business. It's 24/7 by 365 by forever. And there's all these young kids out here trying to kick your ass." Me, I just love to kick ass. Seriously, I'm just so competitive that, F y'all. I want to win, period, and that's it in a nutshell. You can just kind of hear it in that quote, his competitive fire. I know other, guys at the top of their field. I think of Steve Jobs, Steve Ballmer, these incredible competitors that just couldn't stand the thought of their competition outperforming them. Michael Jordan, obviously a huge competitor. The story I always think about is him is he lost in ping pong to one of his teammates in the summer. And it just drove him crazy to where he went and actually got professional ping pong lessons and came back a month later and hammered the guy. So I just think this idea of perfection and being the best is embedded in these individuals' head so much to the point where they become obsessed with ultimately just being at the top of their craft. The second quality I've observed is almost an irrational confidence in one's abilities. And I guess a good anecdote for this is I remember when I first started my job, I worked for a commercial real estate firm. Every now and then I would be pulled into a sales presentation with a couple of the partners in our firm. And so the partners in our firm, they're essentially, at the top of their craft in Orlando in commercial real estate. And what I noticed is after every presentation, they swore, A, we won the business, B, we were the best company for the business, and C, our presentation was awesome. And the reality is not every presentation was awesome. And so if we won the business, that's what we expected. And if we lost the business, what I found is there was always some other external reason why we lost. It didn't have to do with our performance. It's like, oh yeah, they had some prior relationship, otherwise we would have been awarded the business. But they said our presentation was awesome. That was generally always the spiel after we lost. The reality is, I was in the presentation. I noticed, we didn't really handle some of those questions great. But I guess the point is, these guys, they're so confident in their abilities, and they get in these meetings, and it just exudes confidence, and ultimately it comes across as competence to a lot of these prospective clients. And I think confidence is attractive, and naturally people want to follow and be around confident people. So that's the second characteristic I noticed. And the last one is kind of the obvious one. You go down the line of high achievers, there's almost always this extremely disciplined work ethic that's almost abnormal. When I say abnormal, I don't really mean weird. I mean they're doing something that most people just don't do. It's just different. A couple examples. Marissa Mayer, CEO of Yahoo, she's rumored when she worked at Google, she was infamous for 130-hour work weeks. She would sleep on her desk. I'm not recommending that, but she would sleep under her desk, and she said she would strategically schedule her showers. I know that's disgusting, but most of you guys still marry her for her money. But Serena Venus Williams, ever since they were 6 and 7 years old, at 6 a.m. before school, they would be out on the tennis court before school, and then again after school. Again, not many 6 and 7-year-olds are doing that. You know, I think of Ray Allen as a big basketball fan. 3 hours before every NBA game he played, he had a certain routine where he had to get 200 shots up. Another kind of interesting discipline story about Ray Allen is he had a cheeseburger when he was playing at UConn, and the day before a game, and the next game he felt really heavy. He just didn't like how it felt, so he hasn't had a cheeseburger since college. Again, I think that's, you know, and I know a lot of kids that I play with. We eat unhealthy, we'd feel bad the next day, but we wouldn't be able to cut that out of our that discipline. It's just kind of abnormal. The other one I think is 50 Cent. Obviously, very successful businessman and rapper. When he was a teenager in New York, he would sell drugs on the street and then with his friends, and then at night, all of his friends would go and party to the clubs, but he said, no, he would continue to sell drugs and mostly concerned with making money. But again, that work ethic is different for a teenager, and I think that really translates to where you see, you know, his achievement in his field. It goes back to, I don't know if anyone read the Malcolm Gladwell book, Outliers. He talks about the 10,000 hours rule. You spend 10,000 hours, it takes 10,000 hours before you achieve mastery in the field. And I think a lot of this work ethic kind of alludes to that, these stories that I've shared. So in conclusion, a couple points I want to leave you with. First, to summarize, so the 3 common characteristics I've observed are A, incredibly, insanely competitive. Secondly, just kind of an irrational confidence in their abilities. And then lastly, an extremely disciplined, almost abnormal work ethic. I think the work ethic can be learned. I think the confidence can eventually be acquired, but honestly, I think the irrational confidence, just for whatever reason, I think some people have it and some people don't. And then that insane competitive desire, I think that just comes down to how God made us. And I don't think it's necessarily bad if you don't have it, because I will leave you with this. It's more of a question than a statement. As I was kind of observing all these high achievers, I noticed another commonality with them was a lot in their lives, they led a path of self-destruction, which leads me to the question, are these 3 qualities a blessing or a curse? Thank you.